Alrighty, we are on yet again the next part, looking at kind of the end of the section that we were looking at before. It was like kind of like Indian history, and we're getting more into like Indian history. So let's continue. According to the relation of Clitarchus, they place in opposition to the Brahmanes and the Pramne a contentious and argumentative set of men who derived from the Brahmanes as arrogant and ridiculous on account of their studies in physiology and astronomy. They are divided into mountaineer, the naked, the citizen, and rural sects. This one is of the Indian astronomy from the Paschal Chronicle. So, from what I understand and what I know, based on like some of the structures that exist over in India, there's a YouTuber actually. His name is Praveen Mohan, and he kind of goes to these kind of like stone sites in India, and kind of like goes like deep diving on them. And there was one temple. I don't really remember the name. There's a ton of there honestly is a ton of them. But one of them was like on the ceiling of the like relief or whatever the structure. It was like it was a temple, right? And so like you look at the ceiling of it, and there was like the traditional 12 12 astrological signs, very similar to like over here in the West. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think I'm almost quite certain that the Indians use the same astrology as the Near East. I'm honestly quite certain they do, because they also do worship like the cow, and like they have this cow worship that's also like very prominent in Egypt, and I think some parts in Mesopotamia too. I can't say exactly where, but I do know in some like rituals out there, they would not drink the blood or consume any of the blood of the cow or any other sacred animal, so to speak. They would just only eat the meat. They would take the blood out and like give the blood to the gods, or whatever type of thing that they were doing. To say that is going into another topic, but anyways, let's start right here. About the time of the construction of the tower, a certain Indian of the race of Arpachshad made his appearance, a wise man and astronomer, whose name was Andubarius, and it was he that first instructed the Indians in the science of astronomy. That's a really interesting little snippet. Atlantic and Panchaean fragments. We haven't seen these words since the beginning of the book. Holy crap. From Marcellus and Eurymerus. Wait, who are these guys? And when do they write this stuff? Let me. Who is Marcellus? Let's get like a quick. Here, I'm gonna open up the AI real quick. Marcellus and Eurymerus. Excuse me. Okay. Let me look that up, see who that is. Figures from the classical world, one Roman and one Greek, each renowned for distinct reasons. Okay, so this was... The name Marcellus is most famously refers to Marcus Claudius Marcellus, a highly distinguished Roman general and politician. Oh, I think we've seen this guy earlier in this text, or in this book. Yeah, this guy he was a 5-time consul of the Roman Republic and one of the most important commanders in the Second Punic War against Hannibal. So the Second Punic War, I think, is with the Carthaginians. Because the Puna word, we said this a couple of videos, the Puna word refers to the Phoenicians, but it also refers to the Carthaginians because it's very like well noted in history that The Carthaginians are descendants of the Phoenicians, and I think most prominently of Tyre, I think. Or that could be wrong. Anyways. So this guy is actually like a great general. He's a politician, man. This guy spoke the truth. Anyways. Okay, so Euhemerus was from 300 BC, and he was a Greek mythographer, often associated with the court of Cassander, the king of Macedon. Okay. He is believed that the Greek gods were originally historical human heroes, kings, or powerful individuals who were deified and worshipped after their deaths due to their great deeds in benefit of humanity. Yeah, see, this is what I said at the beginning of the video with like some of the Mexican gods, right? So they have all these like depictions of like, you know, these deifications of these beings and associate them with either celestial bodies, a mountain, or some sort of like very, I don't know, maybe prominent time period, but I mean, it's the same thing, you know what I mean? It's just like this is probably somebody actually existing in history who did something great, or a group of people who did something great, and it gets passed down to everybody that these were like very powerful people, but it's really hard to go to that and get into that topic because it's so shrouded now, and it's so clouded by like misjudgment from all angles, even including mine, because we just don't understand it. But I think it just has to. I think essentially at the end of the day, it really has all this type of stuff of gods. To me, like I said, my perspective is subject to being wrong, but I think it's all advanced technology. Every single bit of information that we've recorded in history about something or some being or some person that did something great, incredible, legendary, lived for a long time, has to do with either advanced technology or some sort of evolutionary process that doesn't occur on this earth now. That's all I can really come to the conclusion about that, and it seems like these guys were thinking the same exact thing. These guys, you know, had some interesting takes on the world. Much better than where I'm coming from, honestly. I mean, I'm just an average person, I guess. Anyways, so this is the Atlantic and Panchaean. And so this is from Marcellus the Roman of the Atlantic island. That such and so great an island formerly existed is recorded by some of the historians who have treated the concerns of the outward sea. For they say that in their times there were 7 islands situated in that sea which were sacred to Persephone, and 3 others of an immense magnitude, of which was consecrated to Pluto, another to Ammon, and that which was situated between them to Poseidon. The size of this last was no less than 1,000 stadia. The inhabitants of this island preserved a tradition handed down from their ancestors concerning the existence of the Atlantic island of a prodigious magnitude, which has really existed in those seas, and which during a long period of time governed all the islands in the Atlantic Ocean. Such is the relation of Marcellus in his Ethiopian history. So this guy heard of a legend from the Ethiopians about islands that were like great beyond the sea. They could be talking about the Americas. It could be anything. It could be anybody's guess, to be honest. It could be sunken islands. It could have been the Americas. It's just really hard to say for certain. You know, all this stuff is just hearsay. But man, would this Marcellus guy would have been shocked to know that there was lands beyond that Atlantic. Let's go resurrect this guy and tell him. He's gonna be like, what in the world? Panchaean fragments. Now, I don't know if you guys are seeing this word, but I'm seeing Pangea, and that's probably where this word comes from, but they don't really say that. But it's, I don't know. Panchean means like, I think it means like all earth, right? From like Pan and then Gaia. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the same meaning in this book at this time period, or even from like Euhemerus's time, which is Greco-Roman classical age. In any case, Euhemerus, the historian, was a favorite of Cassander the king, and being upon that account constrained by his master to undertake some useful as well as extensive voyage of discovery, he says that he travelled southwards to the ocean, and having sailed from Arabia, Felix stood out to sea several days and continued his course among the islands of that sea, one of which far exceeded the rest in magnitude, and this was called Panchaea. He observes that the Panchaeans who inhabited it were singular for their piety, honoring the gods with magnificent sacrifices and superb offerings of silver and gold. Holy crap, dude, that sounds like America. That is an incredible, like... I mean, you can say that it's like the Middle East, but, I mean, obviously here they're saying it's not in the Middle East. But he said that, like, when he went southwards to the ocean, and having sailed from Arabia Felix... I don't know where Arabia Felix would be at. I don't know. You think maybe could look that up? Let me see. What is the Arabia Felix? Felix might be like a geographical term that I'm not really familiar with. Possibly, I just know it as like a name. It's a historical geographic term used by the ancient Greeks and Romans to describe the southwestern part of the Arabian Peninsula. Yeah, that's where I was thinking of. They're coming out of the Persian Gulf. So they said they went out to the Persian Gulf. And then he said he went beyond those lands. But I don't know. I'll be honest with people. I don't think Africans were doing any type of human sacrifice. As far as like my understanding with like, well, they'll call them Ethiopians, but like African indigenous cultures and all those sorts, I don't think I've ever heard of any of them doing sacrifices of any sorts. Like doing, I don't even, honestly, like, I don't even think they do any offerings to gods either. As far as I know, with some shamans, they have like stories of like very strange creatures and beings when it comes to some of their I don't know if you would like call them like medicine men in this day or whatever, or just, you know, they're spiritual like leaders in those lands, but they talk about like how they do have sightings of very strange things, and I'm pretty sure some of the like villagers and people that live out in those lands, like way out there, you know, they have encounters with these with something that's probably different out there. We just have no idea, you know what I mean? But we don't take that seriously over here in the West. It just doesn't occur to us because we don't see it, because we're like in this very weird constrained system. We're in a very, very strange, like, constrained system, but I don't even think, like, even in India, like if this guy would have went beyond, like, you know, the Persian Gulf and into like India, or, you know, even further into like Cambodia and stuff like that, I really don't think they were doing sacrifices during those times. And offering, the only place where they were doing sacrifices like that and offering silver and gold was in like the Aztec empires, but even the Aztec empires are like at a much later period. I don't think they were like, I think the Aztecs were like more in like medieval times, I'll be honest with you. Like very early medieval times, when like the Aztecs started doing all this crazy sacrificing and having all these gold artifacts and all these crazy, like, it's silver and gold specifically, but to say that it's an even an important metal like back then during those times is pretty still like astounding. let's just continue. So he says moreover that the gods, or excuse me, he says moreover that the island was consecrated to the gods, and mentions several other remarkable circumstances relative to its antiquity and the richness of the arts displayed in its institution and services, some of which we have in part detailed in the books preceding this. What books preceding what? He relates also that upon the brow of a certain high mountain, in it there was a temple of a Triphalian Zeus, founded by him at the time he ruled over all the inhabitable world whilst he was yet resident amongst men. In this temple stood a golden column on which was inscribed in the Panchaean characters a regular history of the actions of Uranus, Cronus, and Zeus. Dude, there's that golden column crap again. See, they're putting this golden, like, thing in these temples. Now, if you look at from like a not Native American, but if you look at like from like the Indian perspective, they have this type of iconography. It's called a yoni and a lingam, and those represent like the female and male like genitalia respectively. But the common like theme of it is like the lingam is like the male genitalia, and it's like a little pillar type of thing, and they set that in place in the middle of like a temple, and it's to worship. I don't know. I think give reverence to Vishnu. I can't be certain, but the yoni is supposed to be like the temple, and it's typically depicted as a temple. So this type of iconography is like, it's prominent in Africa too. They have the same type of thing with like, if you go to like Nubia and you look at some of these pyramids, the pyramid is supposed to like represent like a pregnant belly, and then the two pillars that are in front represent like you going into the temple, or like a leeway into it. I don't want to get into too much detail, but you can kind of see where I'm gonna go with the kind of like description of this. It's like these are like kind of like, I guess you can call them like pagan type of like things, but it's really like ancient reverence to really ancient ideas. It's like the same thing with like the sun and moon gods and stuff like that, and how I said in earlier videos, it's like there's a female moon goddess that like this thing was like worshipped like so, and it was honestly in some depictions it was a cow, or it was like a type of like, is the best way to describe it is like a cow, and it's like they honored it and like they worshipped it, and they would like say it's just like they're like it's like a mother in that sort of sense, and the Indian and the Egyptian like type of like traditions are honestly pretty close and similar, and they kind of take from each other, even though many incursions, I think we honestly saw in this book actually, like many incursions getting into India was very difficult because they couldn't get past those mountains, and they just ran out of resources all the time trying to get over into like southern India and into the like mainland, because there's like a mountain, rivers, and passings that there's just so many, you probably couldn't take all your resources. You run out of provisions and stuff like that. In any case, this golden column, right? So this is like something that they put inside the temple now. And I've said before that like, this thing could be like a UFO or like some sort of type of like thing, like a not the tabernacle, but like an Ark of the Covenant. It's some sort of, it's definitely some sort of like advanced technology. This is what I'm talking about, where it's just like, why are they knowing to use gold, and what are they using this type of crap for? Like yeah, gold's expensive, but like, why? Why do the gods need gold? What is so gold? What is so powerful about gold? Obviously today, we know today, like gold serves as like, like a money standard, and it was a standard back then, but more importantly now, it's used in like electronics. it's a really good conductor. It's a much better conductor in terms of like durability than copper, because copper oxidizes and it's subject to like weathering much worse than gold. Gold's a really durable like type of like material or substance. So it's like, we're thinking like, we use gold today in our advanced technologies that we have. What's to say that they were using the same type of stuff back then? And we know now like how powerful gold actually is. So there's just something to really like ponder when it comes to all this and what they're saying, because it's really relevant to today, as we can see. That's why I say like all this stuff like just seems to be advanced technology that they acquired like in a very, very distant past, and then here we are today, just kind of like either reset, or we're like a different species from what was before. And honestly, I kind of think the ones who acquired advanced technology were the people that were of a different type of species, and non-human. But it's kind of hard to like put that into perspective, like I said before. It's just what people want to interpret it as, and that's all you can really do when you kind of compare it to what other people say, what they've written down in their books, what's kind of like taboo and not taboo, just kind of like social boundaries when it comes to, because it gets kind of touchy for some reason. It's really not a touchy subject. It's a very curious one, to say the least. Alright, let's just continue. So, in a subsequent part of his work, he relates that the first king was Oranus, a man renowned for his justice and benevolence, and well conservant with the motions of the stars, and that he was the first who honored the heavenly gods with sacrifices, which account he was called Oranus, which is heaven. He had 2 sons by his wife Hestia, who were called Pan and Cronus, daughters Rhea and Demetra. And Cronus reigned after Oranus, and he married Rhea, and had by her Zeus, Hera, and Poseidon. And when Zeus succeeded to the kingdom of Cronus, he married Hera and Demetra and Themis, by whom he had children, by the first of Curetes, Persephone by the second, and Athena by the third. He went to Babylon, where he was hospitably received by Belus, and afterwards passed over to the island of Panchaea, which lies in the ocean, for he erected an altar to Oranus, his forefather. From thence he went into Syria to Cassius, who was then the ruler of that country, and from Mount Cassius he... what was Mount... Okay, I need to know where this is at, actually. Okay. We need to look this up. Mount Cassius. Jebel Akra. I swear this is an important area. Let me see the maps. Where are the maps? Why isn't it giving the maps? Let's go to that. Where is this at? Alright, there. Okay, where it... Oh, okay. Alright. So from Syria to Cassius, who was then the ruler of that country, from whom Mount Cassius receives its name, passing thence into Cilicia, he conquered Cilix, the governor of those parts, and he traveled through many other nations as he honored... Okay, where is Cilicia at? Is that Sicily? I don't think that's Sicily. Okay, so we have Mount Cassius right there. Cilicia. What the heck? Okay, so it looks like he's going like westward. I don't really know where this is like kind of like taking us, but Having through travel many other nations, he was by all universally recognized and acknowledged as a god. You know what's interesting too is that in these lands they have the same depiction as Zeus. Let me show you. I think his name is Adad. God, let's see here. Because Zeus rides a bull, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, see, like they yeah, here we go. Like Teshub, like this is all one person that they relate to as like being the same person, and this corresponds exactly to what this is saying about in these lands, like in Turkey, northern Syria, and probably like kind of going into Ionia, which is western Turkey. So if we take a look at the map again, it's basically this whole region right here has like the same kind of depiction of like this bull thunderbolt god. But when it comes to like when they're talking about like the descendants and all their like relations with like the other gods and goddesses, I really can't make nothing of that. It just seems like kind of like not necessarily hearsay, but it's more of like to consider there were only like 6 or 7 people on the planet just seems like outrageous. It just seems outrageous, and the only way that makes sense, and this sounds like completely absurd, is if like these like descendants or whatever had or came literally from like another planet or something like that, or like they came here on this planet and that becomes somehow part of our history, where like we have one god that comes down and then starts breeding this kind of bloodline. Now there could have been like other creatures and other people at the same time too, but it's just the important thing is like there were the gods, and then that's kind of portrayed like in the Homeric texts. You kind of have, you know, the Olympian gods kind of coming from like the sky and whatnot, and kind of descending from like the origins of like all the universe, and then you have like the Titans, and then the Titans are like kind of the creatures that were already on the earth and like descendants of like, you know, the people who were kind of related to the more primeval gods like Gaia and all that stuff, when it goes down to like the descendants of like Cronus and Uranus and all that stuff. But like I said, it really only comes down to like a bloodline when it comes to that type of stuff. That's why that stuff just kind of doesn't necessarily not make sense to me, but I can't make anything of it other than just related to like the Dingir, or like the like Anunnaki, or like the ancient Mesoamerican gods, or even like the Egyptian gods. Like I just see the same like kind of like thing going on. And then of course like the whole like advanced technology like kind of spin on it, and to the extent in which they were capable of having advanced technology, it definitely does not go beyond, you know, having really long lifespans or cyclical lifespans, meaning they can put their consciousness in like another body. I think that's probably honestly like possible. It just sounds, like I said, all this stuff just sounds completely absurd, but like I said, I have trouble like seeing how these bloodlines are so important, but you know, I could be like misinterpreting even that in a kind of like a different sort of sense. It's like, no, there were actually people who were of great relevance and were considered gods because of their advanced technology, you know? It's kind of the whole take on all of that stuff. So I think I'm gonna end the video here, and then we'll continue here with the Chaldean oracles of Zoroaster. So now we're kind of looking at like some of the Persians, and like more the eastern side, but the eastern side in like the sense of like between India and the Near East, which is basically Persia or Iran. So this will be like a good kind of like viewpoint from the Chaldeans who recorded a lot. So we'll continue all of this in the next next video.